I think it's a combination of things. Obviously, anyone that goes to play Augusta for the first time has probably seen the golf course many times on TV. So in a way, you kind of have already played the golf course. But then once you get there, I think you always get surprised by the amount of elevation changes and slopes on the greens. Even like the size of some of the greens is difficult to like. I remember the 18th green is tiny compared to what you see on TV. Like, watching on TV, it looks like a huge green, and it's actually pretty small. So it's just a very strange feeling that you feel like you've been there many times, but actually it's the first time you see it live, and it's very different to what you expect. The atmosphere during the tournament is amazing. I mean, obviously all the patrons, as they say, they're the most well-mannered spectators in golf. Everyone, I think, is very scared of losing their credentials forever, so they truly behave, and nothing really ever happens. I mean, they cannot run, they cannot obviously take pictures or videos or whatever, and they're extremely good spectators. Well, I remember there's a few shots, a few holes. Like a typical example would be the third hole. There's a pin on the left side of the green that they tend to use pretty much every year. And I remember when I played one year, I had a caddy that had never been there before, and I had already played 3 or 4 times. And when we got there in the practice round, I told him, right, we got a wedge to this pin, to the left pin, and I'm trying to go 30 feet right of the pin. And he looked at me like, why would you go 30 feet right with a wedge? And then we get to the green, and always there's a slope, massive runoff short of the green. There's a small runoff over the pin. And that flag has the potential to make a 6 with 2 decent shots. So I said to him, basically, this is where we're going. And then I think it was in the first round, the pin was exactly there. I hit my wedge shot 30 feet right, 2 putt for par. And the 2 guys playing with us, one kept going up and down the slope 3 or 4 times and ended up with a double. The other one was over the green. And I remember leaving the green, and my caddy looked at me and said, okay, I think that was a smart play. That was probably a good idea to make a 4 there and run away. And even to this day, I mean, 10, 15 years later, every time we watch the Masters, I always get a text from him saying, hey, this is a European on number 3. I would say people always talk about the Masters, about putting, about the difficulty of the greens. I think it's much more about your tee to green. Like if you play well, you're gonna position the ball in places where you have easier putts. You're gonna have better birdie looks, more birdie looks. But actually, the golf course is quite tough from tee to green. So if you're not on your game, both off the tee and approach play, I think it all starts from off the tee, to be honest. Like if you're not hitting enough fairways and keeping the ball in play, it makes life impossible. And similarly with the second shot, you have to have the ability to, plot your way around and then put the ball on the right sectors of the green. It doesn't really matter how far you are, but it's more about leaving yourself decent looks. Because, unlike other courses, like some putts at Augusta are truly impossible. Like sometimes the best you can do is leave it to 15, 20 feet with a putt. So you always want to avoid those places. Like, sometimes you're better off missing a green in the right spot than being on the green above the hole 25 feet away with absolutely no shot to the pin. Well, I would say the third hole for sure. The third hole, there's a lot of people, a lot of players that in the previous years, they tend to lay up. And I would say in the last few years, there's less and less, probably because there's, decent data now that says that you should always hit driver, get it as close to the green as possible, and then go from there. When I played, I didn't have any of this data because it was like 15 years ago now. And I looked at what the other players were doing, and everyone was laying up at the time. So I thought, all right, let's lay up with a hybrid of the tee or 4-iron and then hit a full wedge. But actually, when you look at the data, it's always, regardless of the pin, you have to hit driver, get it close to the green, and then you go from there. So I was wrong, and if I was to play the Masters again, I would definitely hit driver on 3. I think we touched briefly before. I think it's approach play. You need to be able to position your ball on the right sectors of the green. Like on 99% of courses, being on the green, anywhere on the green, it's better than missing the green. Augusta doesn't quite work like that. Like some of the paths are so quick and so difficult that sometimes you're better off being even in a bunker than being on the green on the wrong side of the pin. And that's, I think, very, very unique. Only a few courses have that characteristic. And it's something, that you're not used to. So that's why I think as well, it's always the same players playing well, pretty much, because I think they're the players that have the best course management. They really understand where to leave the shots. And that's also why it's very difficult for rookies to play well. If it's a windy day at Augusta, it's a nightmare, to be honest, because the wind starts to bounce all over the trees and it swears like crazy, especially when you go down to an aiming corner, 11, 12, even 15. It's the caddy's nightmare. Like I remember standing on the 12th tee on a windy day, and they always say, oh, you should look at the flag on 11. But then you look at the flag on 11 and it's like down and off the right. Then you look at the flag on 12 and it's in and off the left. And it doesn't matter if the flag on 11 is down and off the right. It's very difficult to trust it when you see the flag on 12 going the opposite way. So that's one thing. And then the other thing is that the wind is very inconsistent. So like, again, 12 hole, it happened to me. Luckily, it was a practice round, but I was playing with 2 players, similar length to me. And it should have been into the wind. So the first guy hits an 8 iron and hits it right in the middle of the water. So we thought, right, it's blowing a bit more. So the next player hits a 7 iron and he lands it 15 yards in the bushes over the green. Then I go with 8 iron again and I land it on the green. But it was like completely, guessing, and it's like winning the lottery ticket. It's you're picking a club, you try to hit a shot, and then once the ball is in the air, like anything can happen. Which is one of the beauties of Augusta, but it's also extremely difficult. You have to be able to almost time the shots, as in, wait until the wind goes or wait until you get the right gust and then hit the shot immediately before the wind changes. '15 can be, if it's downwind, it's like reachable, probably driver, mid iron for most guys these days. But the problem is, if it's downwind, is like you can't stop the ball on the green. And then, you have the water short that you have to carry. And then there's a lot of guys every year that end up carrying the green, pitching on the downslope, and they end up in the water on 16, which when you look at it is like probably 40 yards behind the green. But again, when it gets firm and it's downwind, there's nothing that can stop the ball. So I think 15 as well, it's a tricky hole when it's windy, because it doesn't matter what wind you have, whether it's downwind, whether it's into the wind. It's always going to play much, much tougher than what it normally does. Well, there's a few. I think the tee shot on 3, we mentioned already. It's when you're there, it's so easy to hit a 4 iron and a wedge, but it's actually you're losing shots right away. Maybe 16 as well, when the pin is on the right, like proximity to those pins, it's crazy. Like you got 8 iron probably. You'll probably be playing 165, 170 yards. And it's like, if you hit it 30 feet away to any of those right pins, it's a good shot and you're beating the field. And again, it's like sometimes it's easy to be overly aggressive and you go for that pin, you miss it by a few yards, and then you end up with no shot at all. For 11th hole at Augusta, off the tee, it's always a driver, probably down the left half of the fairway, simply because if you miss it right, you have no shot. If you miss it left, you have some chance to hit the green at least. And you don't have trees in front. And then on the second shot, depending where the pin is, If the pin is on the right side, you can pretty much go straight to the pin, maybe a little bit left towards the center of the green, but not too much because you have water on the left side. If the pin is on the left side, it would probably tell you to go anywhere between 8 and 12 yards right of the pin, simply because obviously you're hitting more greens, and then even if you miss it right of the green, then the up and down is reasonably easy. So you have some leeway to play with. Then hole 12, when the pin is on the left, you can go pretty much straight to the pin, just a few yards past the pin, making sure you carry the water. When the pin is in the middle, that's the easiest pin because you have the bunker short and the bunkers long to save any wayward shots. And when the pin is on the right, you have to go 7, 8 yards left of the pin, which is, that's conventional wisdom. Everyone says, oh, you have to go over the middle bunker, which is exactly what everyone is trying to do. When you see someone ending up in the water and the commentator said, oh, he was too aggressive, I don't think there's been one person that went for that pin on Sunday in contention. They're just trying to go middle of the green, but sometimes they happen to miss a shot. And then 13, I've never played 13 of the new tee, but looking at it with AI strategy, it would be driver pretty much down the middle of the fairway, maybe right half of the fairway, just to protect yourself against the race creek on the left. And then if you have the chance to go for it in 2, you always have to take it on. Going probably left half of the green, regardless of where the pin is. I think the pin on that green doesn't really affect the second shot strategy at all. Like, with any pin, you're always trying to go left half of the green, like kind of back left of the green. And then if you're lucky, you might push it a little bit, you might miss hit it, and it ends up quite close. And then if you flush it, you might just go over the green or just on the left side of the green, and you still have a reasonable chance to get up and down. You just have to be a little bit careful because it's extremely quick from there. But any player in the field any day would take, 2 just on the left to infringe on 13, 100%. Well, I think it's a combination of reasons. It's the time in the round when those holes are. Like, it's at the beginning of the back 9. Most of the times things are still quite close. And even when they're not close, like, there's so much that can happen in those 3 holes. Like 11, anything from a birdie to a double. 12, same thing. And then 13, even more. Like 13, Rory doubled it last year. You can see eagles, you can see a lot of birdies. So all of a sudden in those 3 holes, you can have like literally 5 or 6 shot swings. When Spieth lost the Masters, he was leading, I think, by 2 or 3 going into Amen corner. And he left Amen corner and he was like 2 behind. So it's like, there's a lot of things that can happen. And at that time in the round, if something happens, then you only have 4 or 5 holes left to play, and there's not much that can happen on 14, 17, 18 especially. And even 16 on Sunday, most of the times it's either a par or a birdie. So like once you go past that stretch, then everything kind of gets a bit more quiet. So it's a really big turning point in the round most of the times. $15, it's a straighter hole than 13, obviously. It's a straightforward hole as well. You just have to hit a good tee shot down the middle of the fairway, and then most of the times you're going to go for it in 2. Now, the issue is the green is very, very shallow from front to back, so you don't have a lot of room for error. Anything short is going back in the water. If you carry the green, especially if you pull it, if you go long left, there's a good chance that you end up in the water on 16. So you really have to be careful about what you do with your second shot. And then I think it was Rory, I think it was last year or maybe 2 years ago, that he went over the green on the right side, which sounds like the good miss, but then all of a sudden from there, it doesn't matter where you look at it, it's downhill the whole way to the water. So it's there's not really a good miss on the second shot on 15. And I think that's why as well, like, especially when it gets firm, sometimes it's almost easier to lay up with a wedge, hit it on the green, make a par, and run away. Like there's a front right pin on 15 that if it gets any windy, the whole play is over par. But when you think about it, if you lay up to 70 yards and play smart, play towards the middle of the green, 2-putt, you're always going to make a 5. But you have to be, again, very smart, very conservative with that pin. And it's, there's a disaster calling you left, right, and center, basically. Definitely. I think when the course is firm, I mean, this is a bit counterintuitive, but when it's firm, it plays more into the long hitters' hands, simply because they're going to have obviously shorter clubs in than everyone else. And if the course is firm, having a shorter club is a big advantage. I feel like when the course is soft, so some years they get some rain. And when the course is soft, then it doesn't matter if you're hitting a wedge or a 7-iron, then you can still stop the ball everywhere. So I feel like on the softer years, the short hitters can have a bit more of a chance. I mean, if you look at it, when Mike Weir won, when Immelman won, they're not long hitters, and they were able to. Those were like soft years. But anytime it becomes firm and fast, then it's always the long hitters that usually rise to the top. I would say we do pretty much the same as we do for other courses, but like we will try and have a very specific game plan for like each pin, each day, based on the weather conditions, based on how the course is playing. I tend to get a lot of feedback from the caddies and the players Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, saying, oh, this year the golf course is playing firmer, or the greens are faster, or they, maybe they change. They usually change a couple of greens or a couple of contours around the greens. So just trying to understand exactly how Augusta is playing, and then making sure that by the time Thursday morning comes, they have like a very clear and specific game plan to how to best score around there. Yeah, so I've been working for Adam for quite a few years now, and I remember the first time I was working with him and he was playing Augusta, must have been 3 years ago, I would say. And we basically gave him this, like, I call him course guide, where, he would have up and down percentages to different pins. So basically for every pin, he knew exactly where to miss it, when to be aggressive, when to be very conservative. And I was very curious to hear his feedback after the tournament, because obviously Adam played the Masters many, many years. And he knew the course like no one else, pretty much. And I remember getting a text from him. I can't remember if it was during the week or if it was like at the end of the week. But basically he said, well, I played this golf course probably 150 times in my life. And I never had so much clarity and so much, not so much clarity and so much information, like where I need to miss it. I need to be aggressive. I can be aggressive to this pin, but I really need to be careful to this pin. And he said, like, just having the information written down was just much, much easier to play and to commit to the shots, because I knew, like, I have to be aggressive to this pin and I'm going right at the pin, while I really need to respect this other pin and I need to play 20 feet short left or whatever the case may be. And to hear that, from him, that it really changed the way he was playing the golf course and really helped him, play better. I think it was quite enlightening, because if someone like him at his level, having played the golf course hundreds of times, says something like that, then you can just imagine how powerful this could be to, a weekend golfer on a new course, or even one of us, when we go play a new course, or someone that maybe only played a few times. I mean, it can be really, really powerful. I would never look at the most difficult holes. Like the first hole is one of the most difficult holes around Augusta, but there's not a lot that usually happens on the first hole. Like it's usually, birdie, par, bogey, but it's like there's not a lot of variability there. I think the holes where the Masters will be decided, it's usually 13. It's usually 15 and 16, I would say. Again, it's like they happen in a moment during the round where if something goes wrong, you don't have time to make up for it. And also there's like huge shifts in scoring those 3 holes, like 13, anything from eagle to double bogey or even worse, 15, the same thing, and 16 on Sunday. I feel like I'm a bit disappointed by the Sunday pin because it's the easiest pin on the green. You have just aim for the middle of the green and let the ball take the slope, and you're always going to end up putting for birdie. Like very rarely you see someone who's in contention and makes a bogey. It's always a par or a birdie. I think if they put the pin on the right side, you wouldn't have so many holes in one for sure, but you would have much bigger swings in scores, and I think it could prove even more fun to watch. But I don't think they're going to change that pin for quite some time now. I mean, there's a few. I think most of the holes in the front nine, they're really underestimated. They don't get a lot of attention. I would say that the 6th hole is a great par 3. I mean, there's basically 2 sections on the green where you have to hit the ball, and if you don't, then it's very difficult to make a par. I think that's a great, I would say average length par 3 is probably 7 iron for most guys, 7-8 iron depending where the pin is. But like most holes on the front nine, like they don't get a lot of attention. There's not much water on the front nine. Actually, there's no water at all on the front nine. There's a lot of water in play on the back nine. And also, up until a few years ago, all you could see on TV was like the back nine at the Masters. So, some of those holes were never seen on TV for so many years. And then, eventually they started to show from the first hole. But I think it's just an unbelievable week. And I think most of the holes, like risk and reward holes, happen to be on the back nine, and that's why all people remember the back nine at Augusta. I think approach play is going to be critical, like most years. It's always the guys that have great approach game that ends up being at the top, and especially from like 150 to 175 yards, I would say. It's very important that you have a lot of shots in that range at Augusta. It's a distance where if you hit a good shot, you can hit it close and make a birdie. If you don't, there's a lot of danger around the greens and you end up making some big numbers. So I think whoever will win next week will be someone that excel at that range in approach play. Well, during the week, I would always look at the guys that are better at approach play. Someone who has usually there's always someone shooting low in the first 2 rounds. But if it's someone that gained 3 shots a day on the greens, most likely it's not going to last over the weekend. If it's someone that maybe gained a little bit on the greens, but then he gained a lot of shots in approach play or maybe even off the tee, then there's a good chance that guy would be up there on Sunday night. Sometimes even after 2 days, you can see, a guy gaining a lot of shots in putting. That's never. I mean, it's always nice to be leading the Masters, but the alarm bell goes on pretty soon. Yeah, so Matt has been playing really good for the last nearly 12 months now. I would say 10 months for sure. He really turned a corner last year. I think it was like late April, early May. He changed swing coach. He started to work with Mark Blackburn. And the thing with Fitzy, like ever since I've been working with him, he's always been not a great iron player. And all of a sudden, in the last few months, his approach play has been the strength of his game, which is, I think it's fantastic. It's amazing that he was able to make such a big change in his game, because we're already talking about a player who was in the top 10 in the world, and even like when he wasn't playing well, he was still top 20, top 25, so it wasn't like off the face of the earth. But to be able to change his game and add a new weapon to his in his bag, I think it's very impressive. And I think also the fact that his approach play was never great in previous years, it's one of the reasons that Fitzy doesn't have a great history around Augusta. And I think the way he's playing now, I think he might have a good chance to be in contention again next week. Because again, it's a lot of it is about approach play at Augusta. and now all of a sudden he's one of the best iron player in the world, and I'm sure he can have a good week. I mean, Scotty is always difficult to leave Scotty outside of any picks. I think he hasn't been playing as good as Scotty, has been playing in the last few years this year. But he's always number one in the world. He's a golfer that suits him to perfection. So if I had to give you three names, I would say Scotty. I would say Colin Morikawa. I think he doesn't have a great record at Augusta, but I think that eventually he's gonna win one. His approach play has been extremely good for many years, and now he's back to winning ways, and I think he could really do some damage at Augusta. So I would say those two, and then obviously we all hope that Fitz is gonna have a good week.